podcast, Combat Pugil. The Pugil pole, or Pugil stick as it is also known, is an important part of both bayonet training and CQC training.
Our CQC and Pugil pole training have in commonality being same system, share foundations and fundamentals, and as such, both forms of training enhance each other. This applies not only to stances and footwork, or combat boots as it's known, but also to mental toughness enhancement and combative capability, controlled aggression, expedient action, and physicality. As long as European military close combat has been practiced, there have been means and methods and equipment specific to CQC training to maximise safety while enhancing capability. That's not to say that all ancient means and methods of practice were as safe as things are today. At Todd Group HQ, we have trade craft specific equipment, kit and devices, as well as we have various means and methods of testing, truing up stances and guard, and enhancing combative toughness, including inoculation against contact impact. And some of these devices include Pugil sticks or Pugil poles, bayonet poles, true guard, tri-impact, cover guard, testing and proving implements, as well as CQC training staffs. Pugil poles come in various lengths, weights, designs, and over the years at Todd Group HQ I have developed different designs of Pugil poles to enhance both bayonet training and CQC training. I inherited from Harry Baldock some very hard wood, large diameter army tent poles that made up our early Pugil training poles. Very rudimentary they were and unforgiving when the shaft contacted with gloved hands or worse, unprotected human bodies. I can remember in one Pugil pole training practice session, two exponents, one around 5'7" and the other 6'11", and the shorter of the two ramming the padded end of one of these rudimentary Pugil poles up under the steel grill under the front of the Pugil helmet, lifting the much taller opponent right off the ground, leaving him on the deck stunned. The blunt force contact impact is a great incentive to combat or counter-engage and avoid being contacted, and this is important for developing combat smarts in close quarter combat and in bayonet training. The Pugil poles we have today are padded at both ends and have a centre padding that the Pugil gloves can fit between, making them safer, but still there are injuries of the hands as a result of excessive force or the grip on the Pugil stick. Other Pugil pole designs included bullpup stock cutouts with slots or holes for use with a training rifle with a composite material bayonet drone to test the accuracy of the training rifle and bayonet in targeting the holes and slots in the stock of the simulated training weapon. Another one of our HQ designed more CQC Pugil training device had a padded butt end with a composite bayonet front end. This design was to ensure the training exponents never took for granted the pointed front end or butt bludgeon back end of the weapon and made every effort to combat or counter-engage their enemy to avoid being contacted. In recent times, training rifles with composite bayonets fixed have replaced the old padded butt end pole with the fixed rubber bayonet drone. The predecessor to the modern training rifles with the fixed training drone bayonets was the bayonet pole. The bayonet pole has been around since the Great Wars and consists of a long hardwood shaft with a wire loop front accuracy or catching end and a round padded canvas covered ball butt end. This training device was to enable bayonet accuracy by means of a combatant with a rifle and fixed bayonet drone or sheath bayonet. The enemy with the bayonet pole could move the wire loop front end, making it difficult for the combatant to aim for the wire loop with the fixed bayonet drone or sheath bayonet. The enemy could also contact with the combatant with the canvas covered padded ball end of the bayonet pole. This training enhanced not only bayonet combat tactics and skills, but also developed combatant resilience and mental toughness. Just as the bayonet course of instruction is a military tradecraft training subject, so is Pugil combat training, and instructors must have come up through the ranks, being trained, tested and qualified in not only their individual competency skills in Pugil combat, but also in the required methods of training, delivery, and instructing of the various components of pugil combat. There are definitely risks involved with pugil training if the training is not properly delivered and if exponents do not conduct themselves within the SOPs of pugil combat actions on. Over 30 years ago, I had to reintroduce, or in some cases introduce, pugil combat to the military, as this was not a skill set that was at that time being instructed. While pugil combat is very hands-on, there is also a large component of the requirement for instructors to be proficient in the drill commands, terms and terminology. The pugil pole is often used in Phase 1 basic training for tougher and sickner training components to introduce exponents to close quarters contact impact and inoculate them against such effects, as well as increase their battle fitness, and as a means of evening up the odds when there is a considerable size and weight disparity between exponents. The introduction of a steep gradient or a wide open training field where the smaller combatant with their expedient footwork and agility can outmove the larger exponent is a good means of evening the odds and ensuring the larger exponent uses their smarts when it comes to physical output. For battle fitness enhancement, the pugil pole can be utilised on uphill or downhill gradients or in swamps or waterways, on the beach or foreshore to enhance their physical capabilities. This can be conducted combatant on combatant or combatant up against an exponent wearing the Battletech Fightman targeting system or against static targets. Just as there are wide-ranging pugil pole designs, there are as many if not more pugil target designs or bayonet course designs. And over the years at Todd Group HQ, we have developed wide-ranging bayonet targets and pugil targets, ranging from static targets, hanging targets, swinging targets, and pop-up targets. The introduction of the pugil pole to CQC exponents is a simple addition, as it does not change the combat boots stances, but does provide an additional means of practicing combat boots footwork and enhancing the killer instinct and mental toughness of exponents. Initially, the hold and grip of the pugil pole and the placement of the pugil pole combined with combat boots footwork is the introduction for the exponent to the retention and use of the pugil pole. Pugil pole offensive actions include thrusts and straight line diagonal slashes, as well as butt strikes and combinations of thrusts, slashes and the butt of the pugil pole. The primary objective is simulating enemy disposal by 1 to 3 second takeout skills executions. However, if this is not immediately possible, the 3 Ds apply: disarm, disable, dispose. Counter-offensive engagement with the pugil pole includes evasive actions as well as static or stationary evasive actions. Counter-evasive strategies include primary options, secondary options, alternative options and emergency options, with primary clearing the kill zone and counter-engagement threat neutralization being the primary means of objective achievement. Pugil pole training for CQC can include skills to command drilling as well as battle lanes, actions on, and BHEs involving pugil combat. The pugil includes orthodox and unorthodox means and methods of offensively or counter-offensively demonstrating, simulating threat neutralization. And this is important, especially for bayonet combat, to ensure the combatant can achieve the objectives both in a primary orthodox means and by an unorthodox means in relation to threat specifics and terrain and situation. Bayonet combat, being a deadly terminal practice, involves not only stand-up skills executions, but also threat neutralization when an enemy PER is on the ground. It also includes footing recovery if decentralized and ongoing with the objective of enemy threat neutralization. Such maintaining of combat boots footing and recovering combat boots footing are equally as important in CQC training. Pugil pole combat training, especially for bayonet combat, includes pugil versus unarmed enemy PER, pugil versus pugil armed enemy PER, and pugil disarming by an unarmed enemy PER. Combat actions in Pugil pole combat training refers to attacking your attacker before they can attack you, and counter actions is in reference to when under assault and compromised, counter-engaging your Pugil or bayonet armed enemy. Pugil kit and dress includes a Pugil helmet with a steel visor, Pugil gloves, CQC neck protector, a groin guard, combat boots, and, when required, military body armour. Protective kit can vary from service to service, unit to unit, or for civilian enthusiast training, also in regards to targeting and the specific training or testing requirements. The reasoning for using Pugil poles is simply safety, as military primary weapons and implements are unforgiving, robust, made of hard materials, and as such would increase risks of injury. The design and development of military weapons has always been to make them as robust and hard, sharp and effective as possible, and you only have to consider the difference between a steel rod or rebar riot stick and a wooden training stick. Having lesser risk, safer training equipment like drones and Pugil sticks and bayonet poles is important to reduce the risk, especially of head, neck, throat, hand and arm injuries during training. CQC operational training weapons usually have metal shafts or hardwood shafts with metal ends, either hammerhead, spiked or edged, as in trench warfare, clubs, picks and battle axes. In training, it is important to have realistic training drones. Pugil and bayonet poles and training drones must, however, be realistic and provide a definite threat and incentive for exponents not to be contacted with them. The Pugil pole certainly does achieve this objective, as do composite drones when thrust with controlled aggression. There is nothing flash or dash about Pugil pole or bayonet pole combat training, and everything is about overkill, direct lines, skills, executions, and, when compromised, expedient counter-evasive threat neutralisation. The spirit of the bayonet is to kill, and the aim of Pugil pole and bayonet pole training is to develop that killer instinct as well as life-saving tactics and skills, making it as real and close to a combat experience as safely possible under training or testing conditions. To underestimate or take for granted a Pugil pole because you have body armour and a helmet on would be a serious mistake, as many have found out in years gone by, being knocked unconscious via the Pugil stick through their hardened helmet and steel visor. The Pugil pole and True Guard have proven their worth with increasing confidence and competency, as well as inoculating opponents and candidates against the effects of close quarters contact, enabling them to get on with achieving the objective of threat neutralisation. The Todd Group HQ developed CQC staff is another effective tool in inoculating combat sports fighters and CQC exponents against the effects of close quarters contact, and also develops their combat boots, expedient action, including clearing the kill zone evasive actions. These devices provide realistic incentives for combatants to use their smarts in the decision-making, initiation and execution of threat neutralisation objective achievement. We not only utilise the Pugil pole as part of CQC training and CQC testing, but also use it for intake inductions to introduce applicants to the controlled aggressive contact realities of what is required to overcome threat effects and be able to achieve threat neutralisation objective achievement. While the composite materials of the bayonet training drones do not have sharp edges or points, and as such thrusts or slashes cannot wound, they still leave their mark when used with accurate controlled aggression hard contact. Likewise, the padded ends of the Pugil poles and the padded ball end of the bayonet pole used with controlled aggressive hard contact will certainly get the recipient's attention. If they do not combat their Pugil pole or bayonet pole armed enemy party before they can initiate an actions on or employ evasive counter-engagement under assault to prevent being contacted. Similarly, like with the use of shock knives in disarming or dagger combat actions on, they ensure combatants do everything they can to prevent contact by clearing the kill zone and disarming, disabling and demonstrating armed enemy threat disposal objective achievement.